place by tourists and automobile enthusiasts. The 80s and the 90s were two decades when the Mercedes Benz brand truly went global in a big way, which meant looking for opportunities outside of Europe, outside of even the United States, and talking about the Middle East and the rest of Asia in a very big way. The brand, in fact, has a stronger old world connect with buyers in many markets. The older generation of car enthusiasts would aspire to a Mercedes Benz more than, say, a BMW or an Audi even today. Mercedes Benz cars went into more global markets much earlier than the rivals. Now, you think with the museum we've covered everything there is to cover when it comes to Classic and Mercedes. But guess again, the Classic Center has a whole lot more to offer. Welcome to a very special place, folks. This is a rare chance to not only get a glimpse of some gorgeous vintage cars, but also, in a sense, take a step back in time. A rare chance because the Classic Center in Selbach is not open to the general public. What better way to understand the significance of the Classic Center than a ride on that very first car that I spoke about earlier? After developing a two-stroke piston engine, Carl Benz went a step further and created the world's first vehicle designed to be powered by a motor. The Benz patent Motorwagen has 3 wheels and a 954 cc engine at the rear. It produced close to 1 horsepower. The car had a very basic steering and braking capability, but in the year 1886, it was quite the sensation, and I got lucky to be able to ride in one. So the Classic Center is essentially the place where vintage Mercedes-Benz cars are restored and sold to collectors or enthusiasts in prime condition. Now, there is a little known fact about what makes a car a true classic.
We are very keen on keeping those cars in original condition. Original means how the car left the assembly line or the company itself. So it's up to you if you want to keep those cars in original condition, which takes a lot of money effort, actually. So you can ask the archives, for example, for some specifications, how did the car leave our company, and we will tell you, okay, this was the specification of the car, and we call it the matching numbers in Germany. It's like the drivetrain, the chassis, and the engine. This is like a three-pointed thing which should be always kept together to keep the originality itself.
So cars are sourced directly by the center and even brought in by collectors for restoration. I've got to say, this really is my favorite Mercedes of all time. Which is why it was a treat for me to be able to see so many of these gorgeous beauties right here under one roof. The 300 SL is a classic in every sense. This classic sports car from the 1950s inspired a whole generation of car lovers and even designers. Its sense of style and the flair of its form have ensured that it has a stream of admirers, the gull-wing doors only helping that along. In fact, this is the reason that Daimler is now introducing a new generation of sports car lovers to the SLS AMG, inspired by the legend. So now you believe that they're always in working condition, these cars. The whole idea of the restoration is really that to get these vehicles roadworthy again in case they are in a bad state of disrepair, which is why you have collectors from all over the world who bring in these cars to the Classic Center. And of course the company itself, which owns so many of these old classics. They're kept in mint condition, kept in running condition, and taken out on the road, as you just saw as well. And over the past few years, there are certain models, besides the SL, of course, which has always been a big favorite for collectors. The 600 is another series which is suddenly becoming very popular, which is why at the center now you have a dedicated area, a separate project, if you will, to restore just the 600.
The people who are working for us have been people who have been working, for example, in the 80s on 600. We've got really specialists who have been from the early days in our company, and this knowledge is always given from one hand to the other one, so that this knowledge doesn't disappear. Because if you think about pre-war cars, which are very, very special, which are not easy to maintain, you need a certain experience to work on those cars. And sometimes we're even taking younger people to educate them, let's say for 10, 15 years, till they take over one day and give this knowledge again to the next generation. We are trying always to keep a lot of components in stock. For example, after the car left the assembly line, after 15 or 20 years, for example, we organize a meeting with our colleagues from the Global Service Parts Department and talk about the issue, how much classic this car will be in the future one day. And then we decide, okay, the SL has a high potential and we will need that amount of spare parts. We're having a huge amount of spare parts in Wörth, for example, that's sitting nearby Stuttgart, where we try to keep all those parts for servicing.
The other cars besides the 600 series or the SL range that have special significance for the Classic Center are without doubt the Silver Arrows from the 1930s. These are very rare automobiles, as I said, and just seeing them in the flesh, being brought to working condition, is amazing for any car nut like me. Now, the Classic Center has more than just a workshop. There's also the collection of cars here that's very special, and I got access to them. Just look at this treasure trove. Real wood, real leather, that's just one of the many classic vintage cars here. Now, I know to a lot of you it just might look like a huge warehouse full of a bunch of old cars, but when you actually step in here, you know that it's all very special, because you can see that each car carries its own story, and it's all been maintained and preserved to maintain the integrity of the car, what it was meant to be. Take a look at this back here. I mean, these are cars that are, of course, restored and kept in mint condition, almost like cars on a shelf in some senses. And, well, they're maintained like that to keep them absolutely safe and secure, even from the harmful effects of the environment. So, sealed up in a box, they get removed, of course, when they go to special exhibitions around the world. And, of course, they are part of the always changing exhibit at the museum you saw a short while earlier. For many people, this is the epitome of automobile luxury. That's the Maybach. Remember, it came out a few years ago, and this particular one is the only Maybach in the world with a Mercedes Benz three-pointed star on the hood. Remember, it actually, the car that is on sale actually has the M, and so this is the only one of its kind, really, here in the collection. Visiting the Mercedes Benz Museum and the Classic Center were a way to allow us to not just experience where the brand or the products come from, but also where they're going and why.
So if you look at it, a brand at the end of the day is all about experience, meaning it's the passion, it's the kind of history that our vehicles have, not by themselves, but in connection with customers. And getting this message across to the consumer, and also creating a continuity with new consumers, new customers. And that's why this museum is so important. This is why the Classic Center is so important. There's nothing better than looking at this long lineage of cars that have performed in the past and that are performing today.
So now, as I come to the end of another freewheeling introduction to a new brand, I will head into the gift shop to grab my souvenirs to remember the Mercedes-Benz story. But it's a story that would not be complete without a look at the latest cars in the ring. which we will do next week. Until then, keep freewheeling.